Here. Jake Bluthik. Here. Dylan Salinas. Brian Coupal is here. Let the record show there is a quorum of board members present. And that this meeting has been posted in accordance with Government Code Chapter 551 in the state of Texas Open Meeting Act. The Kingsville ISD Board of Trustees will conduct a public hearing to discuss the following. A, discuss the proposed 2023-2024 fiscal budget. B, discuss the proposed 2023 tax rate. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Kufal, Dr. Pettis, members of the board. We get up to this.
Yeah.
If you could zoom in a little bit, please. We've discussed the proposed budget for next year in depth. You see at the top the proposed tax rate, which we'll look at the tax rate in a little bit more detail in just a minute. 0.7829, that is a decrease of about 21 cents from the year before. That is a required decrease by the state. We cannot go above that rate without having a tax ratification election. You see the INS tax rate up there at top, 0.6275. That is an increase, but altogether total tax rate decreased by 1.4104. That's a decrease of almost 11 percentage points. We'll talk again a little bit more about the tax rate later on. If you look at the first column, the general fund budget, you see our revenues projected to be $29.042 million. Let me remind you that we are still with early in the legislative session. They may still have special sessions that focus on the education budget. It is possible that the revenues could be adjusted later on once those special sessions go through. If you could scroll down, please. You see how much is budgeted for each function. Total expenditures budgeted $35.7 million. Couple of things budgeted in there, 23% increase in property insurance values. Those went up precipitously last year. You also see the projected fund balance, scroll all the way to the bottom, of $5.9 million at the end of next year. Current fund balance 12.6, projected fund balance 5.9 if everything falls pretty much worst case scenario. That's what the fund balance would be. If you could scroll to the very top again, you see the next column is the food service budget. Projected revenues of 2.5 million. Scroll down, please. Projected expenditures of also 2.5 million, almost breaking even, $13,000 projected deficit in food service. They do have a large fund balance of $792. That will decrease somewhat. If you remember, near the end of last year, we did a $250,000 transfer from the general fund to food service, mainly because that inventory issue. But once that was solved, that money will be going back to the general fund as a prior period adjustment as per the auditor. And so the food service fund balance will be about $250,000 less. That's not a problem right now. They have an excess fund balance. You're only allowed to keep 90 days of operating costs in the food service fund balance. So that'll be $250,000 that'll be going back to the general fund after this year's audit. And then finally, if you look at the last column, scroll up to the top, please. That's the debt service budget, projected $6.1 million in revenues. And scroll down. Projected $7.2 million in expenditures. That's after we do a defeasance to pay off some of our existing debt. Scroll all the way to the bottom. So still projected to have $835,000 in fund balance in our debt service account. I'll take any questions on this.
This is a public hearing, so any comments from the public in regard to the actual budget?
So we're looking at September 1st. 12,636,000 on the fund balance. And what we're looking at projecting as of September 1st, 2024 is 5 million,
Yes, 5.9.
and that's because Esther going away.
That's for a few reasons. Number one, ESSER is going away. We are absorbing $5 million of about $5.2 million of costs from ESSER to the general fund. Then also we have those construction projects as well. We've cut where we could, but those are the main two reasons.
So we put everything that we were wanting to put in there, right? The track, the parking lot, all that in there for this first year.
Yes,
Right.
track, parking lot, roofs of several buildings. We also put in there the retention stipend as well too of $500 per employee as well too.
Dr. Fitz, can you explain again, you talked about the debt service, the food service.
Yes, sir.
There was a deficit, but then you said later on there was,
Okay, so there, we had projected a food service deficit at the end of last year. And because of that, to be proactive, we transferred $250,000 from the general fund because you cannot have a negative fund balance in food service. You can't have a negative fund balance anywhere. So we did that to be proactive. Then after the budget year ended, as we were preparing for the audit, we do always an internal review of the funds before we send it to the auditor. During our internal audit, we identified the problem with the inventory. And that problem with the inventory that was off meant that we did not need to transfer that $250,000 from the general fund to food service. So that will be going back. The auditor had said that that's not a problem. That money never needed to go to begin with. So that money, you see that we have a really healthy fund balance in food service right now. Part of it is because of that $250,000 that we didn't need to transfer in there. And that will be going back to the general fund after this next audit. So that'll be a net increase to our general fund of $250,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anything we need to worry about looking forward or looking past September 1st, 2024 in our fund balance?
Well, a few things. One, once we get under $8.5 million, it affects our financial rates a little bit. And then two, it also affects our revenues because right now we are getting over 5% interest on all the money that we have in our fund balance. So right now we're projecting $600,000 in revenue just from our interest every year. As that decreases, the amount of interest that we're going to get in revenues for the next year is going to decrease as well. So it is a problem where the less money you have, the less interest you're going to get as well. It's kind of a revolving door. The other thing that is a little bit of a concern of is we still have about $2 million left in ESSER that need to be absorbed from the general fund next year. And also, every year, it seems like our payroll costs go up. We try to give raises every year, and we have every year except for COVID. The only way to do that in the future is to get our staffing ratios at a 6.3 or above, so that we're getting enough revenue from our kids to pay for not only all of staff pay increases, but also there's rising costs in everything. Every year, you pay more for fuel, you pay more for instructional materials. Luckily, electricity, we are locked in till 2028. So we have like a really low rate till 2028. So under four cents per kilowatt hour. So we're good there, but property insurance increases every year. So the challenge is if our ADA is decreasing and everything else is increasing cost wise, we have to prioritize what we're spending on as a district. We have to, again, look at our staffing and make sure those ratios are in alignment. So we have some significant challenges ahead. And then also we're looking at, do we need to do more construction costs? It's going to be very difficult in the next few years after this year to afford additional construction costs, just until we get our budget balanced.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We can go to the other document that's in that folder. There's another PDF in that same folder. I'm sorry, go back to budget. And then go to the other PDF B. So this is what we were required to post on our district website. This is a comparison from last year to this year in every function. This is a little bit of, it's not an apples to apples comparison. The reason why is because next year we have quite a bit of less funding from ESSER. So when we look at, basically this includes the general fund, this includes food service, and it includes debt service. You see, we went up from 14 million in instruction to, is that a 16 million there? 16, it's hard. Oh, I can. Okay, so you see an increase there, and again, a lot of that is because everything is being absorbed from ESSER and going to the general fund. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, oh, I see it's broken up by category, but all the way to the bottom, the increase in the general fund is from 29 million all the way to 35.7 million. It doesn't have a total on that, but this is for transparency required to be posted, which normally in a normal year without ESSER allows you to make great comparisons, but in a year where you're absorbing a lot from ESSER, it doesn't allow the greatest of comparisons, but that's just what we are required to post. That's the same spreadsheet that every district is required to post. Any other questions on that spreadsheet or the budget before we move to the tax rate?
I saw that there was some pretty big jumps from this budget to next year, Dr. Pitts. Data processing, I see that we did 477, is that right? 267?
Let's see. Oh, 477. Oh, yes, that's a good point to bring out. So that is actually coding. We our technology budget in the past has been coded to function 12, and they have advised us. A lot of districts used to always use 12, and now they're asking us to code technology toward function 53. So function 53 is now not going to only be just our data processing, but also our technology, which used to be in function 12. And again, that's where most districts are usually moving there. It's kind of a change in the coding preferences, but that's a good pickup there for sure. But so a lot of that is not just data processing increase, but it's just coding technology.
What else does it include?
So data processing includes all our district software. So before that, that amount that you saw of 477 was the district software and everybody who works with the district software. For instance, like our theme specialist was all coded to function 53. But now it's not only going to be all of that, the district software and the theme specialist, but all of the salaries for our technology personnel, and also the software that district software, it's not instructional software, will also be coded there.
So there's also plant maintenance and operations. Going up, just like 1.3 million dollars.
Yes, and there's two drivers for that. One is some of the projects that we're doing, and the other thing is also. There's a lot of salaries in maintenance, so when we did the 2% salary increase. That drove up the cost of maintenance as well there too. Any other questions or comments on this document before we move to the tax rate?
So we don't pay for, what is that, JJAP? The juvenile justice.
No, we don't pay for that.
Slot through to our kids.
We're not required to.
We're not
Our
required to have
district not, our district not big enough that we have to have paid slots for the JEP. So we don't do that. Bigger district like Wayford County are required to do that, every district within. They regard Wayford County are required to do so.
So we had a student that needed them, where would we send them?
We're not required to have a
You're not-
JEP.
You're not required to
Nope.
send anyone out there, so
Correct.
if they have an expellable events.
Doesn't mean we can't send them, but we're not required by law to have a JJP and buy those seats like you would if you were in Wayne County.
So if something was to happen, where would we send?
They could be expelled, likely.
They would be expelled.
Before you expel them in a district such as, or county such as the Wayne is, you would have to send them to JJP.
Okay. Ever expelled students?
Last year we did it. Last year we did it, the year before we did. This year we haven't either. And the one that we did 2 years ago was a required, a mandatory expulsion, not a discretionary.
Any other questions?
So going back to function 53.
Okay.
It went from 477 to 1.2 million.
That's
You
correct.
said it's because it's software, you include the teams, you're including technology salaries. And that almost tripled.
Yes. Technology budget has always been bigger than
Technology salaries,
technology salaries and technology budget is always been bigger than the data processing budget. So now that you combine those two together, that's the reason for the big increase.
so where was the technology budget last year?
Okay, so the technology budget was function 12, but a lot of that was in ESSER last year. So even though you see that the technology budget went from 387 only down to 251, that's because all technology salaries were paid out of ESSER last year.
Purchase all the one-to-one devices, things like that. That would have come out of that.
Was that a grant? We got to purchase those things?
So there was a grant that need for a couple of things. There was something called the Emergency Connectivity Fund. And round one, we got a that was during COVID, and we got a laptop for every kid to take home. And then there was a round two where we were able to purchase about 200 laptops for teachers. But all of those that we're talking about would have come out of function 11. If it's considered instructional, if it's for students or teachers, it would come out of function 11. Function 12 is more, or was more, now that it's moving to 53, was more district-wide software and district-wide devices, not anything that's used by students or teachers. That's coded to function 11.
Chapter 31, and it's guidance counseling evaluation. It went from 418 last year to 1.2 million this year.
Another function of moving all the counselor salaries from ESSER to the general fund.
This doesn't include the ESSER monies, the budget that we're looking at. So because we're having to pick them up off our general or general fund now, it's showing an increase because a lot of that was picked up
Okay,
off.
so last year it's not showing the ESSER salary.
Right.
I get it. I get it.
But the 2 million that you said we do have, could we possibly use that for this year? Of ESSER money that you say we still got to deplete?
Oh, yes, it's already budgeted for this year, right? And the main things that it's budgeted for this year are anything that goes toward learning loss, because we're required to do 20% of our ESSER toward learning loss. So we are putting things such as all our tutoring is going there. There are a couple of salaries that are coded toward learning loss, specific ones that we are coding there. But summer school is being coded there as well. So that's already been budgeted and taken out of the general fund for next year.
So what you're saying, Dr. Pitt, is these increases more likely is because it was picked up by ESSER.
Yes.
And the added expenses for these large projects, we're saying we want to go ahead and do.
Right.
Yes, you're gonna see,
Line item.
you're gonna see that in function 81. Look, notice how there's nothing really in yellow in function 81, but notice how in blue, there's that $2.1 million right there.
And that's good. I mean, that's,
If
if we don't do it now, we won't do it.
I'm gonna say, we're gonna,
Let's do it now. We won't have the money later.
That is a very true statement.
From function 12 again, I know we discussed it earlier, function 53 with technology. Was that on the advice of an accountant, or is that just something? Was it a
We've
workshop?
talked with our auditor. I've talked with Region 2. I've talked with other CFOs, and again, this was before my time, why everything used to be coded in function 12, but other CFOs did it as well too. But now they're recommending that we start coding it toward 53, that it's more appropriate to 53, because what they want, like function 12, instructional resources, media services, what they recommend now is just basically library and library type materials go there. Whereas before they were like, okay, it's instructional resources, so technology resources will just code everything there. But it's at the advice of auditor, service center, and other CFOs. What they're starting to do now is too. You're welcome. Okay, so let's move on to tax rate. So this was the notice that was posted in the newspaper. At the very top, let's just blow it up a tiny bit more, please. Okay, that's great. So you see the maintenance tax rate, the 0.7829, that is the maximum that we can do right now, set by the state unless we have a tax ratification election. And you see the 0.6275, that's an increase, but overall the total tax rate goes down 11 percentage points. You see the increase in the maintenance and operations budget. That is a function completely of a lot of the ESSER expenses moving toward general fund, like we talked about before. So that's the biggest reason for the increase there. The reason for the increase in debt service is twofold. Number one, we are increasing the debt service tax rate by a defeasance, and number two, property values are going up. So you see that overall, we are going to be having more expenditures on the general fund and on the debt service fund. If you look going further down, it shows the total appraised values are increasing. Shows the increase in new property, shows the total taxable value increase. So notice, I want you to notice the big difference between total appraised value 1.67, total taxable value 1.0. There are a lot of properties that either are completely exempted from paying taxes, such as our school district, And others that have big exemptions, for instance, like we're moving to a $100,000 homestead exemption. So just because we have a large taxable value in our school district, a lot of it is exempted. And you see, again, the total taxable value of new property down there as well. You see what our bond debt is, $48 million. And then you see, scroll down a little bit, please. You see last year's tax rate, total tax rate was 1.51 million. And this year's tax rate is going to be 1.51 per $100 valuation. And this year 1.41. So again, almost 11 percentage points decrease. And if you look further down, even though the average residence increased by about $7,700, you see that the average taxable value on residences is going to decrease from $65,000 to $35,000, the amount of a person's residence that is actual taxable. And then finally, you see that the average residence will move from paying $987 in taxes last year to only $502 next year. That's basically about half. And again, that's for two reasons. Number one, we are decreasing the total tax rate. And number two, there is a 100K exemption.
It's not computed in here yet.
Say that again?
The 100,000 is not computed in here yet. This is on the 40,000.
No, this is on the 100,000 exemption. TEA told us to pass our tax rate as if the 100K would pass. So no, this is everything on the 100K exemption. That's what our residents will be projected to pay if it passes in November. Which I don't see, nobody sees any reason why the general public wouldn't approve lowering taxes. If you scroll down to the bottom, it shows our current fund balances, 12.6 million for maintenance and operation, $1.9 million in debt. We are going to use some of that 1.9 million with the defeasance and pay off some of our existing debt as well. All of that is a net boon to our taxpayers. The reason why is you pay down existing debt, then you're going to have a lot less interest that you're paying. So in the future, our taxpayers will be able to pay that off, not only pay it off quicker, but they will be paying less for taxes in future years as well too. So it's a benefit to our taxpayers, not only this year, but on future payments as well. I'll take any questions you might have on this.
All right, any further questions on either the budget or the tax rate? Either from the board or the public? If not, I'll declare this public hearing adjourned at 5:28 p.m. P.M. on Tuesday, August the 29th, 2023. I call this special meeting of the Kingsville Independent School District to order. We'll have roll call. Joe Morales.
Here.
Martin Chapo.
Here.
David Garcia.
Here.
Joseph Paris.
Here.
James Luton. Here. Delma Salinas.
Here.
Brian People is here. Let the record show that there is a quorum of board members present. That this meeting has been posted in accordance with Government Code, Chapter 551 of the State of Texas Open Meetings Act. We move now to the moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance to the Texas pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
All right, this meeting is being live video streamed, so we move to item number 4, which is adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Motion made by Mr. Morales. Seconded by Mr. Palusi. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item number 4, public participation. Address the board.
No, sir.
Item number 6, new business. By common consent, the board agrees to consider as one action item the following, which can be found on pages 3 to 19. 1, approval of the 2022-2023 budget amendment number 2. 2, approval of monthly financial report for April 2023 to June 2023. 3, approval of monthly investment report for April 2023 to June 2023. Is there a motion to accept these by common consent? Motion made by Mr. Morales,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Chapa. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item B, discussion and possible action regarding the 2023-2024 Kingsville ISD proposed budget. This can be found on page 20 to 23 of our packet. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Kufal. We already discussed this in the public hearing. I will take any other questions.
All right, there being no questions on the budget, do I hear a motion? Okay, motion has been made to accept as proposed. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Salinas, seconded by Mr. Ruiz. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item number C, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed 2023 tax rate and resolutions. We found on page 24 to 26 of our packets. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Kufal. We've already discussed this as well. There's two things I'd like to point out. On page 26, you see the actual language that needs to be made for the motion. And the second thing to point out is that this must be a roll call vote. I'll take any questions you might have. And then, Mr. Mannix, does this resolution need to be read or?
Just the tax rate self-analysis.
All right, board, you have heard the presentation we conducted a workshop on this item. We conducted a public hearing on this item. Is there a motion to adopt the proposed act?
Make a motion. That's it.
Can we please use the language on page 26?
Move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of tax rate of 1.414, which effectively is a 1.58% increase in the tax rate.
Motion has been made by Mr. Chapa. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ruiz. Any further discussion? If not, we'll have a roll call vote. Delma Salinas,
Yes.
James Glusick. No. Joseph Ruiz,
Yes.
David Garcia,
Yes.
Martin Chapa,
Yes.
Joe Morales.
Yeah.
Brian Coupal votes yes. Motion carries 6-1. Item D, discussion and possible action regarding the resolution for employee compensation and premium pay during periods of closure and non-work days. This can be found on page 27 to 29 of our packet. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Kufal. This is a resolution that we have brought to the board the last few years. First time we brought it was during COVID. We are not allowed to give public funds, so we are not allowed to pay employees for time that they do not work unless a resolution is passed by the board. So when we had all those closures during COVID, that's when we first brought this resolution here to the board. Then, of course, we brought it back when we had the bad weather closures, or some freezing days, and actually we just had another closure as well last week. So this will allow us to pay our employees whenever we have a period where we're closed, or it also allows us to pay them during days when we have early releases as well too. And you see the stipulations in the language on the resolution has not changed at all. I'll take any questions that you might have.
For salaried employees, it all kind of evens out, but if you have an hourly employee who does not work on a day where we close school, are they receiving any compensation?
They are receiving compensation. This resolution allows them to receive that compensation.
All right, so then if we have a makeup day, how's that handled? Do they get doubly compensated?
Right now, we're planning to have our makeup days on those bright Brahma Fridays. In other words, all employees are already going to be working on those days. So the only reason why it has to be made up is on the student side, so that we can get our 600 minutes. So the plan that Dr. Sandoval is going to bring with the makeup days is days that employees are already working. So we're not planning to have employees work any additional days. It would just be days that students are coming that employees already were working on those days.
That's another beauty of 4.5 days.
Dr. Pitts, the coverage begins July 1st, is that correct?
Correct. It's retroactive.
Retroactive back because it was due, it ended the 30th of June.
Correct.
So they're covered though from July 1st on.
So what this would do is last week, the date that I think we were closed on Tuesday, I believe. We will be able to pay our employees for that day, and they're not going to have to come an extra day and work that extra day.
Then, and when we get to that, we're gonna. It's gonna be a huge push then to get the students in for the age.
Absolutely, it'll be, because otherwise it could really hurt us, right?
For that.
Yes.
Something.
All right, any further discussion? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
So move.
Motion made by Mr. Garcia. Seconded by Ms. Salinas. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item E, Discussion and possible action regarding dual enrollment memorandum of understanding between Texas A and M University Kingsville and Kingsville ISD. This can be found on page 30 to 49 of our packet. Dr. Sandoval.
Thank you, Mr. Kufal, board trustee, Dr. Pettis. I'm bringing to you the MOU between Texas A&M University Kingsville and Kingsville ISD. And this MOU has been presented and reviewed by our attorneys. We are ready to propose it and get it approved by the board tonight so that we can make it active for the 2023 school year. Nothing has changed in terms of the fees, the expectations of the courses that are available to our students. I think it's 28 courses are available to our kids there at Tamook. And we do have students that are, right now we've got kids going to CBC, but in the spring we will have more of our students going to Tamook because of the process that we're trying to set up with the early college and high school to make sure our kids get in early with our CBC get started, and then Tamook will be one of the university will transition them into in the spring semester. So we ask that the board of trustees consider approving that MOU between the two entities.
I make a motion that we approve it.
Motion's been made to approve the MOU by Ms. Salinas,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Morales. Any further discussion?
I have one discussion item, so. Dr. Sandoval, as far as looking at the memorandum, definitely. Pretty straightforward, but my question to you would be, what are we doing or looking at? Because some of the community colleges will be offering a FAST program, offering to where tuition and fees are free for the first 15 college hours. Del Mar College being one of them, CBC considering it in the spring. They haven't really approved it yet, but Del Mar College has agreed. So my question to you, as far as us paying a $200 dual credit fee versus getting the first 15 hours for free, what are we doing to maybe open up discussions with maybe a Del Mar College or even more with CBC to continue considering those if the district's not gonna have to pay anything. I know that there's some things being worked out as far as ancillary costs, because if institutions opt into the FAST program, students pay nothing. They're not allowed to pay anything. So if they need equipment, if they need fire retardant shirts because it's for welding, they're not allowed to pay for that. So I know there's some discussions between districts and the institutions to see. So I guess my question is there any other MOUs that we have maybe started discussion with Del Mar or anything like that?
You actually bring up a good question, Mr. Reese, because I had not heard about that fast, what do you call it, fast?
FAST program.
The FAST program, so definitely need to reach out and talk to.
They just approved it last week because, oh, sorry. Is that the- I believe Leonard Rivera, is this on? Leonard Rivera had presented to the superintendent last week at the Education Service Center. At the Education Service Center, and so that was information that we're gonna be meeting about, because like our CNA students are the students who take classes through Del Mar. That's going to save us some money. But also A&M has, Dr. Bella presented to the superintendents also a couple of weeks ago about that they're gonna be offering, I think they're called the Havilian Commons, I don't know what they're calling it. Havilian Commons. And that one was for economically disadvantaged kids to be able to get free dual credit tuition free. But Del Mar has it for anybody, any student. So right now, we just need to accept their MOU because we are gonna have a partnership with them, and then we can negotiate about that as well. But you know, do we wait? Because all those things are kind of happening right now. We should be getting something from Del Mar soon too.
Yeah, and-
When they graduate, when they go into.
I'm not sure what they're calling it.
I don't think that's the right answer.
Yeah, that's.
Howling promise is
Called,
if you make $65,000 or less,
Yes.
they're guaranteed free tuition. And free tuition
But
for
that's not
any.
dual credit.
yeah, but they are gonna be doing something with dual credit as well.
So
I don't recall what the name of it is.
in this MOU, it did indicate that for those students that are economically disadvantaged or education disadvantaged, it would be half price, I think $100 or something like that. So half the price in the MOU. So, I mean, it's a great, I'm not trying to discredit it, because definitely, getting college credit from a four-year university is good, but it's also as good or as rigorous from a community college. So just something to think about, something to consider.
It's definitely great. I mean, and we're working with Del Mar as well through our bed program, so we definitely need to look at and see how that would benefit us when we look at that Del Mar MOU for this school year as well. So thank you, Mr. Reese, for bringing that.
Especially with the crunch of numbers this next year, so I mean, that's. something that we
And-
need to look at.
Yes, and Dr. Gull is supposed to be actually meeting with us because I shared with him about what Del Mar is also doing. And so if our kids can't, get all the way to Del Mar, not all of our students, we need to be able to take advantage of something like that nearby for our students. as well.
But then also, keep in mind, I know Del Mar does credentialing for, if you have, 18 hours in a specific, in a master's program, they can even credential your own,
Yes.
your own staff here. So, they become essentially adjunct professors at Del Mar, so that would prevent you having to go all the way.
We're really blessed that there are three, institutions, that want our kids and we want to be able to afford to give them the best that we can as well.
Any further discussion? If not, there's been a motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Item F, discussion and possible action regarding the 2023-2024 KISD revised instructional calendar. This can be found on page 50 to 51 of our packet. Dr. Sandoval.
Thank you, Mr. Kupo. Before you have the new revised instructional calendar for the 23-24 school year. Because of the closure we had last Tuesday on the 22nd of August, we have to make some changes to this calendar. The state requires that we have at least 75,600 minutes in our instructional calendar. We were at 75,640 minutes or 400 minutes for the school year, meaning we were short one actual day by 100 minutes. So what's before you, we propose adding 3 of our bright Brahma Fridays, making them our bad weather days. Currently, right now, we only need one day to make up for the day that we used on the 22nd. Because with the 400 minutes plus the extra, I think it's 240 minutes that we would gain by making the first proposed day, October the 6th, a bad weather day where we'd ask all kids to show up to school and be part of instruction, and we'd be able to get the ADA for that. That would give us more 640 minutes. We'd be 140 minutes above what's required to gain that day back. But in order to have an additional day, in the event that we have another bad weather day sometime this school year, we're proposing April the 19th and May the 11th as the two additional, the 10th, I'm sorry. May the 10th as the additional 2 days, because those 2 days will have to make the 500 minutes that we will require to be able to get funded and meet our 600 minutes for the school year. So we're proposing 3 days, October the 6th, April the 19th, and May the 10th, as our bad weather days on this revised calendar. Questions?
So we'll be using the October 6th for this past.
Right. That in addition with the extra 260 minutes to make up the 500 we need, and we'll have 140 minutes left to carry over with those 2 additional days that we're proposing in case we need to use them.
All right, you've heard the presentation. Is there a motion to approve the 2023-2024 KISD revised instructional calendar as presented? Motion made by Mr. Ruiz. Seconded by Ms. Salinas. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. The board will now enter into closed session in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the Government Code 551.071 and 551.074, deliberate and consider the following. A, consider and deliberate on the proposed termination of the 2023-2024 chapter 21 term contract of Stephen Chapa. This is under Texas Government Code 551.074. B, consider and deliberate with legal counsel regarding construction defect litigation and or other action. C, consult with attorney to obtain legal advice. Texas Government Code 551.071. Board, we're gonna delay item number 7D, which is the government's team training, until after we have completed item number 8, so that we can dismiss the rest of the people who will be done with the business. At this, no action will be taken until we return to open session. We are entering closed session at 5:51 p.m. discussed in open session upon which action may be taken. We're returning to open session at 6:30 p.m. Item 8A, discussion and possible action to propose termination of the 2023-2024 chapter 21 term contract of Stephen Chopper. Fellow board members, I propose that we take legal action to proceed termination of the 2023-2024 chapter 21 term contract of Stephen Chopper.
So to propose,
To propose the termination. There's a second?
second,
Second by Mr. Garcia. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 6-0 with the extension of Martine Chopper. Item 8B, discussion of possible action regarding legal counsel for construction defect litigation or other matters. Fellow board members, I would like to propose that we table this item to another meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Coonrod, seconded by Mr. Ruiz. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carried 7-0. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting, although we're going to continue with government team training and development back in closed session. So in terms of the special meeting of the board, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Mr. President, I would advise that just returns.
All right, so we will are closing until the final. At this time, the board is returning into closed session. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, no action will be taken until we return to open session. We are entering closed session again at 6:33 p.m.